New videos every day.
Are you working on your first resume? Or if not, could your old one use some sprucing up? Hi, I'm Michelle from Write by Night, a writer service and writing center in East Austin. And today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how to write a resume. The most important thing I can stress to you as you work on your resume is that you need to tailor your resume for whatever you're applying for. So before you even begin, you should check whether you're applying for a school. A lot of times schools will have certain formats they would like to receive the resume in. Or if you're applying for a job position, it's always great to look at what the employers are wanting in their candidates and even try to mimic some of the language they use in their requirements on your resume. So once you have a good idea of the type of resume you need, be it creative, professional, or academic, the next step is to decide on a format. And there are a lot of ways you can do this, but I have an example of a simple resume format for those of you who would like a little bit of a visual example. And so the first step is you want to have a header, something that provides your name and any contact information you'd like to include. For example, a phone number, email address, or maybe even a home address if you think that would be helpful. So once you have your heading all set, the next step is to find out what section headings make sense for you. So on this example, I have education, experience, activities, involvement, or research, whichever of those fit with you and your experience, awards, skills, work status, and interests. And these might not be the headings that make sense for you, but this is just an idea for a starting point. So under education, if you're going to include that, if you've been to college, graduate school, any higher education past high school, you want to include any of those experiences and make sure you include the name of the school, any majors, degrees, and some companies and schools ask for GPAs, others may not. So that might be a time when you want to look at the requirements for where you're applying. If you haven't yet been to college, then you should include any high school information, GED information, anything of that sort. Next, you'll have your experience. It can be work experience, volunteer experience, professional experience, anything like that. And important things to include for your work experience are first, the name of the company or volunteer organization, your position, whether you were an intern all the way up to, senior vice president. You want to include the dates at which you were employed or volunteering for that organization. And then it's always a good idea to include a few bullet points detailing your responsibilities or any projects completed while you were working with that group. And it's always great to include as much experience as you can, and tailoring your experience and your bullet points to the job or school you're currently applying for is always a good idea. So now that we've talked about education and professional experience, two of the most important sections on our resume, I'd like to talk to you about a couple others that aren't necessary, but might be good if they fit well with what you've done in the past. So the first section is a section that includes any type of activities, community involvement, or research that you might have accomplished in the past. And this can include a sorority or fraternity you may have been in, a group you might have been a leader of, any volunteer experience if you didn't include it earlier in your work experience, or even any type of research project you've undergone, such as a dissertation, a thesis, maybe even a long-term project that meant a lot to you or you really grew from if it fits well with what you're applying for. Another section that you may or may not include is awards. So any important salient award that you've received that you think might look good for this potential employer or potential school would be a great thing to include on your resume. Another one is skills. And it sounds kind of funny, but the kind of skills I'm talking about are things like computer skills. Do you know a programming language? Are you proficient in Microsoft Word or Excel or Access? Things like that are really useful and can really set you apart from another candidate. Another great skill to include is any proficiency in a foreign language, whether it's full fluency or even just a working knowledge or conversational. That can be something else that sets you apart. Another thing you might want to include is your work status, be it citizen or you have your work permit or whatever it may be. A lot of times employers will find that to be very helpful. And a final category that some employers may like, others may not, and it's really up to you, is your interests. Especially if your interests really coincide with the type of program or job you might be applying for, or if it's just more of a creative, personable company and you think they might be interested to know a little bit more about you. So like I said, these are just some ideas for sections, but as you think about it, as you work on your resume, just be aware of what works for you and what makes sense for your resume. So now that we've gone through all of the different components of a resume, what's important to keep in mind is length. I know this sounds like a lot, but it's really important to try to keep your resume about to the front of one page unless the potential employer or school tells you differently. And a great way to do this while still including all the important information is to keep a master list on your computer. So every time you're in a new job or at a different school or something like that, if you just keep a list on your computer of different projects you do, different responsibilities you have, and have a master resume that can be as long as you would like it to be, that has all of the different points on it, so that when you start tailoring your resume for a specific job, you can choose simply the responsibilities and points that make the most sense for that position or for that school. So now that you've talked about the length of your resume, another important formatting topic that I'd like to touch on briefly is making sure that everything is consistent. So as you can see on this one, and this is, as I said, this is very simple, but it's always good to have consistency with your font size, with your indentations, and with the way that you list your job experiences. So the way you list job experience number 1 should look the same as the way you list job experience number 2, etc. And even if you want to get really picky about it, it's often good if you can use the same number of bullet points, at least for the most important ones. Older jobs that might not be as relevant, you might have fewer for, but the first couple that you think are the most applicable to what you're applying for, you should try to have them mirror each other in style and format in the way you write them. And another good tip when you're putting your resume all together and you're finalizing it is to make sure you're using active language. So instead of saying, you took care of something, you managed something. Instead of saying you put something together, you organized it. And so using words like that, especially if you can use words that mirror the job description online or the profile of students that a school might be looking for, that can be an additional thing that helps you if you use their language on your resume, because it kind of shows not only that you've been paying attention, but it might sort of give your resume that little extra something that they might be looking for. In another video, I'll be giving tips on writing a cover letter, especially one that will be customized to your future employer or even to the school you're applying to. And in another video, I'll be talking about job interviews, from what to wear to what to say to make the right impression. Thank you for watching my video, and I really hope it was helpful for you. If you'd like to know more, visit us at www.writebynight.net. And give the video a thumbs up, leave me a comment, and please subscribe to our channel.
If you're out there in the job market, then you know that putting together that perfect resume can be really nerve-wracking.
And here with tips to help make assembling that resume easier, to talk about their upcoming job expo, is Professional Education Manager Stephen Goodfriend from Rasmussen College. Hey there, Stephen.
Good morning. How are you?
Now, I was reading where there was an article in USA Today that talked about how, for the most part, the paper resume is dead, but that doesn't mean that you still don't need a resume, right?
Right. Still, a resume is very important. Start with a very professional resume on paper. Make it clear, make it professional looking, and then go to the online version, because you're going to need that to submit to all the different websites, all the different jobs that you're going to be applying for.
Now, with the LinkedIn site, and I guess there are other professional networking sites as well, that's the one I'm the most familiar with, is it a good idea anymore to just send your LinkedIn profile directly to an employer, or should you actually submit in email or something your digital resume?
Right. Well, you should submit it in email if you can to make that connection. But LinkedIn is a fantastic tool to be able to make those connections and identify where the jobs are and be able to apply for those jobs very easily with your online resume.
We have an example of a bad resume. And what is the number one thing? What is the number one thing people do wrong? Or is there a number one thing?
Yeah, that's a picture of me there from the golf course. That's the first thing.
It shows you do it at leisure.
But this is really an unprofessional example, and you shouldn't have pictures at all. Employers don't want to discriminate, and so oftentimes if they see a resume with a picture, that means that they know what you look like, and they don't want to know what you look like, so they really can't. So keep pictures off of your resume. Make it sure that it's clear, it's professional. Don't use any fancy fonts, like I've got my name there in a script. That's not good either. Use nice, clear language. Have a professional email address. The email address there is really unprofessional.
Havingfun123@hotmail.com or cuckoo512. Something, you don't want that, right?
Right. So it's very easy to create a new professional sounding email address. So do that when you're going to be sending out your resumes and we're going to be looking at jobs.
I have a question about the objective header there. Is it important to even have an objective anymore, or are we really referencing the wording and maybe making it more specific?
Well, the objective can be important, and it's okay to customize a resume for each particular job that you're applying for. So don't think that you need to just create one great resume and send it out to 100 people. Take the time to look at the job and look what the job qualifications are, and slightly modify your objective to meet what the requirements are for that job.
And when you're talking about a paper resume, I've been told time and time again, I don't know if this is right or not, keep it to a page. You know, even if you don't list all your skills, a one page or just a certain amount on the screen is a good idea, isn't it?
Yeah, but depending on how many skills you have, somebody who's got 30, 40 years experience, they want to be able to identify all their experience and all their relevant knowledge. So it's okay if you go more than a page, but don't just add words just to add words. Keep it succinct and keep it important. And we talk about some of the skills that we have on a resume. Make sure you use action words, things that are really relevant to the position.
Like what instead of what?
Well, so instead of saying, I'm really great with people, talk about specific results, specific skills that you have, like awarded top 10 customer service.
Okay. We are going to go to the second part. So here we are now looking at the experience. We talked about skills there being more specific, using action language. What should we do when we're addressing the experience portion?
The experience section needs to be also relevant as well and very specific to the kinds of outcomes that you provided for that particular employer. So if you had certain skills, certain job functions that you know can be transferable to the next job, make sure that you put that in. And feel free to add some specifics on the kinds of results that you were able to achieve in your previous job.
So you kind of want to you want to pad it without being dishonest, but you want to make it sound as good as you can without being deceptive.
Sure. We don't want to ever put anything on a resume that's not true. That's definitely a no-no. But show your resume to somebody else, because somebody else might look at it and say, well, this really doesn't sound like really what you accomplished in that job. You really should. You could add more, and you can make it look better to really highlight your skills that you really have.
Because nowadays there's no excuse for any spelling mistake. You know, attention to detail. You misspell detail, you're gone. You're out of there. You're not even a contender, right?
If somebody sees misspellings on a resume, and I see that all the time, it really is a black mark. You don't need to use abbreviations. Be clear. Make sure that if there's a word that you don't think that the other person might understand, be clear to spell it out and not use abbreviated words.
Now, our attention was drawn to references also, but the resume that we were looking at said references available upon request. Is that not the appropriate verbiage? Should you actually include the references?
Well, you shouldn't include the references. You don't even need a statement that says references are available.
You should
That's
not
assumed, right?
You do not need that. It is assumed.
Yeah.
And if your employer, prospective employer, wants to see references, they'll ask you for references, and they'll have that very clear procedure. So it really is just wasting space on your resume.
What about in regard to your online, your life online, your social media and things like that? You know, you go to a party, you're tweeting some pictures. You got to be careful about that stuff nowadays.
You do definitely have to be careful. And right now, you know, so many people are on Facebook or are on all these social media sites, and really be careful. Look at that and pretend that you're looking at it from the view of a potential employer, and what would they see. And take some of those things off that you think may not be that appropriate to a potential employer. They're not supposed to be looking at your online profiles and your Facebook accounts, but you really you don't know for sure. So be on the safe side and take some of those things off.
That's why all my girlfriends and I have the no Facebook without permission.
Oh, that's a good idea.
That everybody takes the pledge before any kind of thing goes down. But let's talk a little bit about some of the career expos that you have going on.
Right.
We have them this week. I believe there are two. We're going to put the information up on the screen so that Stephen can give us all the information on it. But they're this Thursday. This one is from 3 to 6, and it's where is this one located?
That's in our Newport Richey campus. That's on Little Road in Newport Richey by the Government Center from 3 to 6 on Thursday. And then also we have our Tampa location, which is off MLK and Falkenberg Road. It's our Tampa campus, and that's from noon to 3. And we're going to have
same day
on Thursday. We're going to have dozens of employers there, hundreds of available jobs. And we originally started that for our students, but we realized that so many people from the community are looking for work. We really open it up to the community, and we, especially veterans, people who are looking for a new career or looking for a job, come to the campus and check out some of these great jobs that we have available.
Stephen Goodfriend, thank you for being here, man.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Hey, and as he mentioned, to learn more about Rasmussen College, how they're helping students everywhere earn degrees that are relevant, practical, and in demand, visit Rasmussen.